gas prices would rise, emissions laws would tighten, and horsepower would fade into memory. But before that curtain fell, Detroit built machines so powerful and so shockingly quick that the quarter mile became their battlefield, and the roads of America echoed with V8 thunder. This is the definitive lineup of the 10 fastest 1970s muscle cars over the quarter mile. Number 10, 1970 Chevrolet Camaro Z28. The 70s Z28 was the fighter that was grossly underestimated back then, and oh, what a big mistake that was. With a 350 cubic inch LT1 small block, it delivered a perfect balance between raw power and tight control. It wasn't the heaviest hitter, but what it lacked in torque, it made up for with agility. It was built for drivers who wanted to feel the speed, to throw the car into corners, to live between the gears. A clean pass through the quarter mile clocked a solid 14.2 seconds, and that's with the traction of 1970s bias-ply tires. In a world of brute force, the Z28 was finesse and fury in harmony. Number 9, 1970 Ford Torino Cobra 429 Super Cobra Jet. The name alone sounds militant, like something built for battle and not for the boulevard. The Torino Cobra with the Super Cobra Jet package. Under its sculpted hood, a 429 cubic inch V8, officially rated at 375 horsepower, though everyone knew it was closer to 400 and some more. Designed with drag racing in its DNA, Ford offered a 4.3 to 1 axle ratio, drag pack oil cooler, and beefy internals meant to take punishment. It wasn't your typical 1970s refined car, as it was common in that era for cars to get quieter and more comfortable. But Ford decided to look the other way with this model. You could say that it was a fighter on wheels. At 13.99 seconds down the strip, the Torino Cobra earned its place among the quarter-mile elite. This was Ford's message to the competition. Brute force still works just fine. Number 8, 1970 Pontiac GTO The Judge Ram Air 4. When Pontiac rolled out The Judge, they weren't just selling a car, it was selling chaos. And the reason is that you'll often find the Pontiac GTO in very noisy colors like carousel red, and they would have these cartoon-like graphics, almost like something right out of the comic books. But that was nowhere near all there was to the car. It packed a serious punch. With the Ram Air i4 package, the 400 cubic inch V8 came alive with 370 horsepower and an attitude that screamed defiance. It sprinted through the quarter mile in an even 13.9 seconds, often faster with slicks and a skilled driver. In an era that was beginning to take itself too seriously, the Judge brought back the thrill of simply having a good time behind the wheel. Number 7, 1970 Oldsmobile 442 W30. Oldsmobile might not be the first name you picture when talking muscle, because it had more of a reputation for luxury and all that. It was the kind of brand your parents or grandparents might have driven, very conservative and all, but the 442 W30 changed that perception instantly. Equipped with a 455 cubic inch V8, conservative factory numbers claimed 370 horsepower, yet dyno sheets told another story. This thing was a beast disguised in fine luxury. A properly tuned 442 could rip the quarter in 13.9 seconds, with enough torque to bend the laws of physics. It rode smoother than most alike, but when that 4-barrel carb opened, refinement turned into rage. It was Detroit's dual personality machine, polite in the driveway, unhinged on the drag strip. Number 6, 1970 Buick GS Stage 1. Coming in at number 6 is the 1970 Buick GS Stage 1, and here's a funny thing. People who didn't know better thought it was a calm, sensible ride. Some even joked it looked like the kind of car your college professor would drive. But that professor could outrun you before you even blinked. Classy lines, subtle curves, and a hint of chrome. But do not be deceived, the Buick GS Stage 1 was no ordinary gentleman's coupe. Under the hood lurked a 455 cubic inch V8, underrated by GM at 360 horsepower. In reality, dyno tests proved it was closer to 400 plus. It wasn't a car for the headline chasers, but it was for those who wanted elegance with evil intentions. Talking about torque, a crushing 510 pound-feet, that's more than most modern supercars. At the drag strip, the GS Stage 1 silently destroyed challengers, pulling off 13.38 seconds. This was power disguised as polished chrome, Buick's mic drop moment in the muscle era. Number 5. 1970 Dodge Challenger RT 426 Hemi. If big, bold, and brash was ever a car, then it was the Dodge Challenger RT 426 Hemi. It was known on the streets as Detroit's Daredevil. With the same 426 Hemi Fiv 8 as the Cuda, it delivered explosive performance wrapped in movie star looks. The Challenger was not the type of car that was just built for racing. No, it quickly became a Hollywood movie star, literally. It hit the big screen in classic films like Vanishing Point, and after such appearances, the car became a symbol for risk takers and just anyone who wanted to escape the ordinary. It was the muscle car that didn't care about changing times. It was too busy breaking them, and it sprinted through the quarter mile in an even 13.62 seconds. Number 4. 1970 Plymouth Road Runner Superbird 426 Hemi. Aerodynamic, outrageous, and engineered purely to dominate NASCAR, the Superbird wasn't subtle, and it wasn't meant to be. With its wild nose cone and that 23-inch wing towering above the trunk, this car looked like something built for Mars. Beneath that cartoonish design was a deadly serious 426 Hemi with 425 horsepower. In a straight line, it demolished the quarter mile in 13.5 seconds, gliding through the traps with both elegance and ferocity. What started as a race car for the oval became a street legend for the fearless. The Superbird was proof that sometimes the weirdest ideas create the fastest monsters. Number 3. 1970 Plymouth Hemi Cuda. In our top 3 is the Plymouth Hemi Cuda, and now this one. Eden was a real monster. It had attitude even when the engine was off. The 70 Hemi Cuda was the typical Detroit brawler with a short wheelbase, long hood, and a monstrous 426 Hemi heart, rated at 425 horsepower. But people around said the real figures were far scarier. The moment you hit the gas of that beast, you send the tires spinning instantly. The engine would roar to life as well, and before you know it, you're hitting a quarter mile in just about 13.12 seconds. But we have to say, it wasn't built to be comfortable. The car's purpose was to prove a point that Plymouth could still make the pavement quake. And in that brief moment before the regulations came crashing down, this car stood tall, loud, and untamed. Number 2. 1970 Chevrolet Chevelle SS 454 LS6. Few names strike as much awe as Chevelle SS 454 LS6, the king of the big blocks. Its 454 cubic inch V8 produced 450 horsepower officially, but in truth, closer to 500. This car was definitely an overkill, unapologetically so. At the drag strip, the LS6 could hammer the quarter mile in 13.1 seconds, sometimes quicker. The torque slammed drivers back in their seats like a jet catapult. In an era of rebellion, the SS 454 was Detroit's declaration that too much power was just perfect. Up until today, it still stands as one of the fiercest factory muscle cars ever built. Number 1. 1971 Plymouth Hemi GTX. At the top of the mountain, one of the final true heavy hitters of the muscle era, the 1971 Plymouth Hemi GTX. It shared the legendary 426 Hemi power plant, tuned for outrageous torque and relentless top-end pull. This was 12.9 seconds of pure asphalt violence. No traction control, no electronics, no apologies. It was the swan song of an entire era. The GTX combined brute engineering and unapologetic style, the perfect fusion of Detroit steel and drag racing dreams. Few cars after it would ever see these numbers again, as emissions, insurance, and oil politics changed everything. By the mid-70s, horsepower was fading majorly because engines were choked by regulations and premium gas was disappearing, so muscle cars became shadows of their former selves. But for one blazing moment, roughly between 1970 and 1971, America reached the peak. Torque ruled, chrome gleamed, and quarter-mile times under 13 seconds were enough to crown legends. The cars went far beyond taking you from one place to another. If you really look at it, they captured a generation's spirit of rebellion and zeal. Car experts will refer to them as pure emotion cast in steel, drenched in bold colors, and unleashed onto the asphalt in one final roar of American power. Even today, when you hear that deep growl of a big block V8, it's like hearing a ghost from the greatest battlefield of speed. The 1970s muscle cars may have been born in chaos, but they left behind legends that will never die. So that's how the 1970s muscle cars stack up on the quarter mile. But what about the cars that started it all? If you want to see where the muscle era truly began, check out our breakdown of the fastest 1960s muscle cars, the wild machines that paved the road for everything you've just seen. Don't forget to like and subscribe.